Hello and welcome back. So this is part 2 of the Perplexity AI series, where I'm going to walk you through the developer experience of using the platform. So Perplexity AI has two elements. One is what they offer to consumers and what they deliver to developers. So for developers, Perplexity AI has an API endpoint which is exposing models for inference. So this is very similar to how OpenAI does it, or Anthropic or Hugging Face expose the models, or Amazon Bedrock. Now, what is unique about Perplexity's approach is, apart from the open models like Mistral, Llama, and others, Perplexity has what is called as fresh LLMs or online LLMs. And they are offering that as an endpoint that you can invoke. Basically, a model that is exposed through an OpenAI compatible API. So these online LLMs are very unique because they can actually give you fresh, up-to-date, current results. They don't have a cutoff date. They won't come back with the standard response saying that I have been trained only till the specific date and I don't know what you're asking. So those are called the online LLMs. So in this demo, I want to walk you through the API exposed by Perplexity and invoking the Llama 2 model, which is a very standard technique, and we'll actually run the same prompt through the Llama 2 70 billion parameter model and also Perplexity's own 7 billion parameter online model and see the results by ourselves. So let's jump in. All right. So if you have a pro subscription, you actually get a $5 credit every month to try the API. So you can also buy credits if you run out of the $5 limit that provides you with the pro subscription. The API is evolving. It is still in the early beta, but it is fully functional. What I really like about the API is OpenAI compatible, which means if you are familiar with the chat completion endpoint of the OpenAI API, this is exactly the same. And guess what? Perplexity Labs has one and only one API, which is the chat completions API. That's it. This in itself is pretty powerful. So once you have the OpenAI library, you can very quickly hit the endpoint. Now, when it comes to supported models, they have a variety of models that you can consume. There is Code Llama, there is Llama 2 70B chat, Mistral 7B instruct, and the most recent Mistral 8x 7B instruct, which is the powerful edition of Mistral, which is the mixture of experts that became available recently. Perplexity has its own set of foundation models, the 7B chat and the 70B chat. Now these are like any other LLMs, but they are trained. For example, the Perplex 7B chat is basically a fine-tuned model of Mistral 7B, and similarly the Perplexity 70B chat model is a fine-tuned version of Llama 2 70B. But what is unique and why you should sign up for this is because of the models which are the online LLMs. So the PPLX 7B online and 70B online are online LLMs or fresh LLMs, which means they are capable of delivering real-time responses, most up-to-date, most current responses. So how did Perplexity ended up building this? How did they end up really developing this model? Well, they are highly inspired by a paper published recently, very recently, 22nd November 2023. And if we look at this model, if you look at this paper, it basically suggests an approach of using search engine along with the traditional LLMs. Even the most capable LLMs tend to respond in a very standard mechanism, saying they have a cutoff date and they are not trained beyond a specific timeline. So what this paper proposes is combining the power of search engines with LLMs. So to actually demonstrate this, they created a data set and they classified the question and answers into 4 different categories. The never changing ones, which are like historical facts and they don't change forever. Then they are slow changing. For example, how many vehicle models does Tesla offer? Now, this may change over a period of time, but not very often, not in an year at least. And then there is another type of query, which is fast changing. For example, what is Brad Pitt's most recent movie as an actor, or who won an award in the most recent Oscar awards? So these are fast changing and they change at least once in a year. And then there are false premise questions, which means they are fundamentally wrong and they are factually incorrect. And the LLM or the engine has to come back and say, this is not right, this is not accurate, it didn't happen. So those are the false premise questions. So they basically created a data set that contains questions categorized and classified into each of these labels. And then they actually used a mechanism where they combined the power of search engine with LLMs. And this has become very, very powerful. So the way it works is, if you understand retrieval augmented generation, RAG, what this paper recommends or proposes is search engine augmented language models. So here, every time a query is sent, an outbound call is made and multiple web pages are indexed and retrieved. So they have the source URL, the date, the publication date or the last modified date, the title, the snippet that has been extracted, some of the highlighted words that came out of the search. And then these are sorted, for example, based on the publication date, and a context is created, which is a summarization of the output from all the sorted input sources. And then that is injected into the prompt, very similar to RAG. And the LLM now has the actual context based on which it can respond. So this approach is actually called as fresh prompt. So the fresh prompt, it leverages a text prompt to introduce contextually relevant and up-to-date information coming out of a search engine to a pre-trained LLM. Now, at a very high level, this is the approach proposed by this paper called Fresh LLMs, refreshing LLMs with search engine augmentation. Now, what we see here, the Perplexity 7B online and 70B online take the same approach while exposing these models through the standard OpenAI compatible endpoints. So let's see this in action. So I want to switch to a Jupyter notebook. So I've already installed the OpenAI library. I grabbed the key from Perplexity's API page. And initially I'm setting the model to Llama 2 70B, which is supported. And I want to ask a question, which is, what is the schedule of ICC Men T20 World Cup? Now, this is a forward-looking prompt. This is yet to happen. And this is something that is referencing the future, which the LLM is not aware of. So let's actually run this. So I initialize these variables and then we construct the entire prompt template where we set the system role. You are an AI assistant and the standard definition of the system role. And then for the user role, we simply pass the prompt that we initialized here. And then we call the OpenAI API by passing the API key, and the base URL is the perplexity.ai API endpoint. Now, this is what makes it very useful and also interesting. And then we go ahead and invoke. I set the max tokens to 4,000 because I want a larger response. And then when we inspect the response, it is exactly like the way OpenAI responds. It has the same object model, and you can navigate this if you're already familiar with the OpenAI schema. So we look at the choices of 0. It is basically a list, and then we grab the message content. So this actually comes back and says, I'm happy to help you, but it actually comes back very confidently with a wrong answer that is referring us are pointing us to the 2020 T20 World Cup. So obviously this is not accurate. This is expected by almost all the LLMs because they don't have the knowledge of the upcoming events or the most current events. Now, let's actually switch this model to Perplexity's online LLM. So what I'm going to do is grab this and then run the notebook again. So let's look at the response this time. All right, now look at this. It is pretty accurate. It says the World Cup 2024 is set to be co-hosted by West Indies and US from 1st June to 29 June 2024. Now this is amazing. No LLM can come back with this kind of response. And this is pretty fast. It is not actually showing us, it's not asynchronous, it is, and there is no delay, there is no latency, it is almost instantaneous, and it takes the same time as the Llama 70B, but it comes back with a very precise, very accurate answer. It also shows us the schedule because we actually put the token size as 4,000. Now, there are two online models. So before I get back, this is pretty useful. Now you can do a lot by consuming this API. You can create chatbots that are very knowledgeable, that are highly relevant, current, and accurate. So Perplexity offers two online models. One is 7B, the other one is 70B. Well, there is not enough documentation on the fundamental differences or the reason why you have to choose one versus the other. But my understanding is if you are actually using this, you can actually combine more of logical reasoning questions that also need an online query, online search. So if your query is more complex, which is a combination of reasoning plus online search, you can use the 70B online model, which is, by the way, a derivative of Llama 270B chat. And if you are okay with just an online response and summary of the results, you can use the 7B online. But interestingly, both of them have the same context window, that is 4096 tokens. And there are a few caveats. You cannot really use multi-turn conversations with the online LLMs. So a multi-turn conversation is continuing the conversation or continuing the thread where you basically start asking a question and then you do a follow-up without repeating yourself. And because the LLM has the history that is coming to the through the messages collection, it can look back and then decipher what is the logical answer to that question. So you can create a multi-turn conversation with a capable LLM like GPT-4 or Claude 2.1. But you cannot do that with online LLMs because these are pretty much like stateless. Even if you send the history of the previous conversation to these models, they simply ignore it. It only increases the token size, but they don't really care. They only care about the query because that's what is being sent to the SERP API, which is the search engine API. So this is pretty cool. Now you can do a lot with it. For example, you can build RAG applications by combining this with vector database, or you can even build LangChain or Llama index based applications, because all of those work thanks to the OpenAI compatible endpoint. It's very easy to integrate this API with LangChain or Llama index. In one of my upcoming videos, I'll show you how to use Perplexity's API with LangChain. So, and also how do you use RAG, the retrieval augmented generation, with one of the models like the Llama 70B offered by Perplexity Labs. So that was a quick walkthrough. I have articles written about this, which I'm going to link in the comment section. So that is a very quick walkthrough of the Perplexity API. And I'm going to keep an eye on this and bring you all the updates that I find offered by Perplexity Labs. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm going to bring in the most happening, the current updates from the world of generative AI. Thank you.